While the biggest fish of the MLB offseason still need to be reeled in, the Philadelphia Phillies are being forced to make some difficult decisions about some players a little bit lower down on the totem pole here. With overseas teams sniffing around about some of the fringe MLB players in this Phillies organization, they may be forced to make some decisions a bit sooner than we expected to be the case here. I want to break down the latest reports about a couple teams in the KBO, the Korean Baseball Organization, reaching out in regards to some Phillies players and what the overall response has been to that. So to dive right into it, doing to start out with this initial report. Shout out to our guy Phillies Tailgate for always being on top of things on Twitter here, and he tweets out news. The Hawama Eagles of the Korean Baseball Organization, the KBO, attempted to purchase Cal Stevenson's contract from and the Phillies refused negotiations. Stevenson will remain with the Phillies for 2025. And to add to this a little bit further here, we do have this tweet from the KBO Trade Rumors account here, which is translated obviously from Korean, that says attempted to buy out Cal Stevenson in parentheses Phillies, but the Phillies refused negotiations, a failure. Now, this is not the only member of the Phillies organization or former member of the Phillies organization that was involved in, as we also got news that former Phillies outfielder Jake Cave has signed a one-year contract with the Doosan Bears of the Korean Baseball Organization, the KBO. So not that mad about Jake Cave. That is not a guy that I saw any sort of future in Philadelphia. Particularly, I mean, we didn't see him like basically at all last year, and I think Cal Stevenson in particular, who isn't a guy who was a building block or foundational piece by any means, but is a guy I think just outplayed him and, earned the right for that. So I do like that the Phillies refuse that. That is something that speaks to me a little bit that there is some sort of belief there. And I do think for Cal Stevenson, obviously the end goal for him is still to be a regular player in the major leagues. And I think there's no better way to do that than sticking things out, that you're getting a bit of an opportunity. And frankly, how the outfield will go for this Phillies team is still very to be determined here. Now, there's another player that I did want to bring into the conversation here. And to talk about him a little bit, I do want to pull up a highlight here. So shout out to our guy, Johan Rojas, going yard down there. Already out working the bats, improving his swing, and this is probably one of the hardest hit balls that I've seen from him here. Now, obviously, this is not major league talent that he is full out going against, but it is nice to see him make that home run trot, going around the four bases there. And this is something that I did want to note as far as if this can be something added to his repertoire, even if there's a semblance of power in his bat here, that does change the outlook for Johan Rojas pretty drastically here. So I like the confidence. I always love the swagger that he plays with here. We know that the glove is about as good as it gets from a center fielder. And I do think the Phillies are really watching this pretty closely. That I think Rojas specifically here, we've seen the flashes for what he can do, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Also saw a couple highlights of him bunting, beating out infield base hits. That it is the Johan Rojas experience that is going down right here. And I do think the bunting is particularly noteworthy here. That has to be something that is in his bag. Now, I'm not saying there is a direct linear translation to Rojas doing things, outside of Major League Baseball, and then all of a sudden you're facing the cream of the crop as far as baseball talents, that it translates right away. But I do like that he's putting the work in. It does seem pretty clear and pretty concrete that the Phillies have a developmental plan in place for how to get him to that next level to where he can be an everyday center fielder, because the bat is still not there at this point in time. And I think Rojas, to be perfectly honest, is the complete X factor in how this team will be built out from here. Is there a belief that as of next season, he can be an everyday center fielder and a guy that you can play into the playoffs? We've seen the moments where he just looks lost at the plate, where he's clearly not a good enough bat to be on a dangerous postseason roster. But it's also tough to argue with some of the things that he can do defensively. We've seen the ups and downs. I do like that they're giving him plenty of opportunity to play through it, but I do think this will be kind of a make or break year for what is the role of Johan Rojas, and do they need to go a different direction here? Now, in fairness to this Phillies team, this has not been the only thing that they have explored, and did want to note Austin Hayes, who had this quote. This was obviously the midseason acquisition, the guy that was supposed to tie this whole outfield together, and we did not get to see a chance to what that fully looked like there. And Hayes himself was fairly outspoken on it, saying to Ken Rosenthal, quote, "I know I didn't live up to what I know I can do as a ball player. I want the offseason to fly by so I can get to next year and show everybody. This is me. What you saw last year, that's a shell of me. If I can hit 260 with a kidney infection, what can I do when I'm healthy?" I do feel bad for Austin Hayes to an extent. It's very clear to me that we did not see his best baseball, but I'll also note there was a reason that he kind of lost the job with the Orioles before that trade went down. Was an all-star the season before. We've seen the peak of what he can do, and the Orioles were a team who had some playoff aspirations. They weren't a nothing team by any means, but they also weren't a team that I perceived as true contenders just about start to finish the season. They did have kind of a hot stretch where I was starting to buy in a little bit, but then they went and traded for just about every scrap of the Phillies bullpen that was already proven not to be good enough in a postseason setting there. So who knows what happens from there. We'll be wishing Austin Hayes the best of luck moving forward, and I would be curious if there is any sort of desire to rekindle that or bring him back or see if there is more in year 2. I don't think that's probably going to be the case. I think he probably wants to set his sights elsewhere, and I think for this Phillies team that they have their eyes on bigger ticket players from there. But to take a look at what the depth chart looks like from a outfield perspective here, that as the roster currently sits, in left field it is Brandon Marsh, it is Weston Wilson and Kyle Schwarber. At center field, Johan Rojas and Brandon Marsh, and then in right field, Nick Castellanos and Marsh as well here. To call a spade, this is not a World Series caliber outfield at this current point. Now, granted, one player changes the look of that drastically, not even just a Juan Soto player, which obviously changes the picture drastically. And frankly, I've mentioned this plenty of times already, but the more I've looked into Juan Soto, man, woof in the field. That dude does not have just about any, like, he will be a notable step down from Nick Castellanos in right field. Now, granted, you rock with the bat, and that is what is the most important factor there. So I'm not saying I would be out on Juan Soto for defensive reasons by any means, but just something to keep in mind that if that were to be hypothetically the direction the Phillies were able to go, then a guy like Johan Rojas becomes incredibly more important to this team. Now, when looking down this outfield as a whole here, as I mentioned, I do think Rojas is kind of the X factor for how they perceive things or how things can be built from here if he is ready. But when looking around, we've seen rumors with Nick Castellanos. I find it hard to believe that you can find an upgrade for Nick Castellanos, and that is where kind of the tough threading the needle that this Phillies organization is currently in is you have good players and you're trying to get to great players. Now, one of the ways that you're able to do that is you got to uproot the farm system and go get some win now talent. Now, this has been one of probably the most surprising things to me since Dave Dombrowski has taken over the organization, that to me, sort of the reputation of him is he did not care about the prospects. He was going to make those big deals. He was going to swing for the fences and do whatever it takes to get this team over that championship edge. But when looking at the farm system and kind of the development that has gone down, just take a look at this on a year-by-year basis. So the Phillies farm system rankings, according to MLB Pipeline, back in 2020, they were 23rd. 2021, 27th. 2022, 25th. 2023, 23rd. And last year, 16th in the major league there. Now, you're not winning any sort of trophy for having the 16th best farm system, but there is a quote that I do love that I think, is relevant here. It's that prospects are great, championships are better. And I do think now is the time that you have built this up. The opportunity has not been right. You have not found those missing pieces that you should be shipping off your top prospects to. But if you still have these World Series goals, I have a little bit of fear in my heart that we're allowing the opportunity to slip by. Aaron Nola, Zack Wheeler, not getting any younger. Bryce Harper, still playing at an incredibly high level, but for how long? JT Realmuto, very clearly on the decline at this point in his career, and while I still think that there's something that he can give this team, the best catcher in baseball label has been stripped from him a couple seasons ago at this point. So if you want to get it done with this core of the Phillies team, I think it's pretty important to act right now, that you have to bring win-now pieces into this team, even if that means sacrificing a little bit for the future. So I'm going to be very curious to see how things are handled from here. I would be extremely disappointed based on the rumors that we've heard, everything kind of going around this team, if there is not at least one big splash move. If that is Garrett Crochet, if that is swinging the fence on a Juan Soto deal, which I think is looking slimmer and slimmer the opportunity, if that is an Alex Bregman, if that is something like that, you have to find a way to make a notable change that improves this team. That does not mean just Jake Cave being sent to Korea or holding on to Cal Stevenson. That means making an actual tangible move that changes the championship ceiling of this team. That needs to happen in the pretty short term, in my mind. That we're starting to see everything swirl around the league, all these options beginning to be taken away. The Dodgers are shelling out money to everybody, Blake Snell and anyone else that'll listen and sign on the dotted lines there. So this Phillies team has to match that. The Dodgers aren't the only one who can defer money, my friends. So let's see what happens from here. Dave Dombrowski, it's time to really get in the lab and lock up. That this is the moment where we cannot let things pass by. We cannot let this era of Phillies baseball go out so easily. And I at least need to see a puncher's chance that this is what we're missing. I'm optimistic this is the difference this season. That's kind of where I'm at this point in time. I'm getting antsy about there not being any moves going down at this current point. But let me know what you guys think. Am I starting to get impatient? I understand winter meetings have not even gone down yet, and that is when it seems like there'll be a little bit more traction in things. But I would like to see some more concrete reports connecting this Phillies team to top top players that could improve the roster overall. So we'll see what happens from here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into these videos. Trying to build up this Phillies Digest family as large as possible. Want each and every one of you guys along for the ride. So if you have not already, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video, and leaving your comments below. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Phillies Digest with hopefully some breaking news and some pen hitting paper for this Phillies organization soon. Peace.